As yoga teachers in training, it can be really easy to get focused on just getting through our studies and assessments or teaching our next class. But I think it's also useful to take a pause and to zoom out and look at what might your teaching practice look like in the real world, not just in theory, but in a way that fits with your life and your values and your capacity. So that's what we're going to do today. Take some time to kind of map out your dream yoga teaching practice. If you want a structured template for this, like as a journaling template, you can find a link in the comments or on the blog at yogatrinity.com. And you can download and use it to brainstorm and make a record of what you're thinking and what you're dreaming of today. Before we dig in, I do want to be clear that there's not a single right model of being a yoga teacher. Yoga teaching can happen in a huge variety of settings and formats and rhythms, and it can change over time. So this discussion is an opportunity to explore possibilities, to notice what genuinely appeals to you right now, and to begin mapping out a teaching practice that feels for you realistic and sustainable and aligned. And I know it can feel like a lot to try to frame a whole career, but think of this as a snapshot of your vision, your aims, your goals right now, knowing that this is going to be fluid and changeable. So if you're a note-taking person, you might want to grab a notebook or start a new document. My first set of questions for you to reflect on are kind of about looking at the shape of your teaching. So where do you imagine teaching most often? Is it a yoga studio, a gym, a community space? Do you plan to teach outdoors or online, or do you have an idea of a mix of those environments? My second question is, who do you want to teach to? Do you feel more drawn to large groups or small groups or one-to-one private sessions, or do you want to teach workshops or retreats? So that's another thing to kind of play around with. And finally, how many hours per week realistically feels supportive for you right now? In my own teaching over 30 years, I came from a personal training background, so it was really comfortable with one-on-one sessions because that had been my experience. It took time to develop comfort in other environments, and some things I tried really didn't work for me, including retreats. It's just not for me, especially when other people do it so well. So if you're starting out your career, I think it's useful to find both environments where you are comfortable, where you can find ground for yourself, and also be open to new ways to teach yoga and find new things that might work for you as well. Um, I also want to mention that if you're looking for a less regular teaching practice, perhaps because you're a shift worker or you have a heavy travel schedule, options exist. So you could teach pop-up classes, you could share classes with another teacher, or you could teach in shorter bursts, like a 4-week series. And I mention this because teaching doesn't have to look like committing every week to the same time and place if that doesn't work for you, for any reason. So this is a chance to kind of map out what would be the dream of where I would teach, when I would teach, and what types of groups. Next set of questions I want to ask is lifestyle and sustainability. So do you imagine yoga teaching as a full-time profession, a part-time role, a side hustle, something you just do occasionally? And how does your current life situation, so if you have other work, if you have family or dependents, your physical or energy capacity, your finances, how do these things influence what's realistic for you at this stage? And finally, I really think it's important to consider what boundaries you want to establish in your teaching life. Like, Can you teach early morning classes or evening classes? Can you teach on the weekends? Um, Again, in my own teaching, I was really young when I started. I was single. I had no kids or dependents. I was able-bodied. And I was looking to teach yoga full time. And I was lucky to be comfortable taking some risks. So I could teach any hour of the day. I could teach on weekends. Teaching 15 or 20 classes a week was doable for me. And so I took on every opportunity that I could. And I said yes to everything until I couldn't. And so the boundaries question really goes to, you'd be surprised how overteaching happens without you noticing. You start with one class, then you agree to sub some classes for another teacher, which then turns into regular classes. And suddenly you might find yourself feeling resentment driving to a 7 p.m. class in the dead of winter, eating all your meals in the car and exhausted and kind of confused about how it happened. You wake up and go, wait a minute, why am I teaching 5 times a week when my plan was to teach 2 times a week? The underlying reality here is overcommitment in yoga is rarely intentional, and it creeps in through like your enthusiasm and your passion and availability, and perhaps not being able to put clear boundaries or say no when you're asked to take on classes or just help out. So the boundary lesson here is having a clear picture of what your ideal teaching load is, as kind of a form of self-protection, not selfishness, especially if you're balancing teaching with a full-time job or with a caring role. So that's why that question's really important. My next questions are, who do you want to work with? Are you drawn to the general population or a particular group, kids, prenatal, elderly students? Or are you looking to teach for a specific purpose? That might be, the style of class, like gentle yoga, or, particular populations, athletes, or teaching for stress management. And what experiences or interests in your own life might shape who you enjoy teaching? So those are some things to think about. One of the things that I learned after a few years of teaching was that while I really enjoy instructing big, all levels drop-in classes, I didn't get the feeling that it gave me space to really teach yoga. Like, I wanted to know that I was helping to educate people in yoga practice and philosophy, something that would stay with them beyond this class, right? And give them tools and strategies and ideas that could help them develop a lifelong practice. And for me, that meant teaching in studios and running my own classes rather than maybe the gym. And it meant developing a student base that attended regularly enough that I felt like we were developing and learning together, where there was space to interact and explain and contextualize their learning. And that passion I had for educating is what led me to the next phase of my career, teaching yoga teacher training programs, which was kind of a natural next step for me and for those values. So the underlying reality here is that not all teaching roles support the kind of teaching you want to do. And I think that that's something to keep in mind and to be reflecting on a regular basis as you get to know yourself as a teacher and explore different environments and different populations. And from a career longevity perspective, burnout can come not just from teaching too much, but from teaching in ways that don't align with your values. So that's something to think about as well. And that kind of leads to my final set of questions about your values and the evolution of your teaching practice. So taking time to think about what matters to you in your teaching practice. Is it stability? Is it flexibility? Is it creativity? Is it community? Is it income? Is it service? Um, and how open are you to your teaching practice changing over time? And also, what feels exciting and what feels intimidating about your current vision? These are things to map out. And again, I'll share my own experience. One thing I didn't realize about having a full-time teaching practice, again, for 30 years, it's a long time, but I guess I wasn't fully prepared to how much it would need to change over time. And for a long while, I had a really busy, really fun teaching schedule all around the country, but it also meant I had constant travel. I had many hours of admin and student management. And it meant that I missed out on a lot. I missed out on a lot of time with family and friends. Um, and those were the sacrifices for having the kind of teaching schedule that I had. I don't regret those days of teaching, but it couldn't be my whole life of teaching. Now, as a middle aged teacher with some physical and energy limiting conditions, I have to teach differently now. So, if you're a brand new teacher watching this, I'm in the same place as you in some ways, mapping out a new way of teaching, finding a flow that works for this stage of my teaching practice. Um, and, it's not a regret of my past choices. I've loved it all, even the many mistakes and crazy choices I've made. But it's more of an acknowledgement of the truth that things change and we have to be adaptable to that change. And my needs and my values are maybe a little different today. So I'm having to remap. Um, so the underlying reality here is what's possible at one stage of life may not be possible or desirable later. And it might be that you're in a bit of a reverse situation that you're working full time, you want to teach part time until you retire, and then you plan to take on a more full time teaching role. So these are things to kind of map out. We do want to be, when we're mapping things, thinking about sustainability and thinking about seasons. Sustainability isn't just about being passionate, it's about the reality of your energy, your body's capacity, your financial needs, and maybe your boundaries changing over time, right? So I hope that's been useful. I hope you've got some ideas to start making a map for yourself, whether that's in words or pictures or your imagination. As we close, um, I want to remind you that your teaching practice does not have to look like anyone else's to be valid. A sustainable yoga teaching life is not built by pushing yourself into a model that doesn't fit, but by paying attention to your energy, to your values, and your capacity as they are now. And what you've imagined or written today is not a fixed outlook or a prediction. It's simply information. You're allowed to grow and adjust and pause and redirect as you learn more about yourself as a teacher and as you gather experiences. So, let this vision be something that you can return to occasionally, not something you feel pressured to live up to. I hope that's been useful for you. Again, if you want to have those questions outlined for you in a journaling template, you can find it in the comments below, or you can find it on the blog at yogatrinity.com. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me, and I'm very excited to hear your big dreams for your yoga teaching practice if you'd like to share. Thanks so much. Bye.